Yeah.
New.
So looking at the calendar, you can see that the next assignment is due on Monday. And so next time we meet, we'll be looking at your, the project where you put yourself into an historic photograph. Last time we did a little project, putting a girl into a building in the window. So we're going to do another one tonight, actually two of them I'm planning to do, which I think will demonstrate some other skills and things that you can do or need to think about anyway as you begin to do this for your project. Have you found the photo that you want to use? That's important at this point to have that identified and decide where you're going to put yourself. And let me just suggest, if you've got a picture with a crowd, don't put yourself in the crowd, put yourself up front with the main subject of the photo. Previous students have done that where they're a little face in the crowd. That's not demonstrating what I'm looking for, and it's not going to have the visual impact that would be useful for this photo. So think about how you can put yourself as one of the main characters. And then, you want to pose for this image. Just picking some picture that you've got, trying to make it work is not going to be as successful. So you need to plan what you want to do, pose for the picture, dress for the part if you can, as much as you can, and have someone take a photo matching the lighting direction and other things as much as possible. And just goes with the saying, find a nice plain background to do this again so that you can pull yourself out of that picture without a lot of background noise to deal with. Okay? So let's do that for this first part of the class. I need you to go to our class files. Courses support files and 2600. I'm going to go into the directory right at the top, Elvis and Friend. Okay. So we just need two of these pictures, the JPEG of Elvis and the PSD of Scooter Guy. So I'm right-clicking and downloading to the desktop. And the section to the name, so it's a unique name. And same with this. The other JPEG is of the Scooter Guy, but just the raw JPEG before I. Okay, where did that save? Sorry, expected that to be to the desktop. Saved in images in another place, somewhere we were working on before. Oops. So I'm pulling those out of my other folder that I used in the other class. The file path name was set there, and I didn't notice that. So here are the two pictures. If we look at those, just a quick look. Here's a promotional photograph of Elvis on his motorcycle for some movie I haven't seen. It was, sometime in the 60s. He did a whole series of these you may or may not be aware So this is him, supposedly a bad biker guy, riding his Honda 350, which was a big bike for that time, I guess. And notice his really nice leather jacket. Hasn't yet had any bugs on it. Anyway, so little did the world know that he had a riding buddy. We're going to put his riding buddy in with him. That would be this guy. Now, we'll open these in Photoshop and we'll see that there's a background. Again, most software, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of software doesn't know how to deal with layers. And this happens to have, this happens to have a layer mask on it, so the background's hidden. But let's open these in Photoshop. Select them both, open with. We'll get this place. What we want to do is, is pull the guy out of the one photograph and put him into the image with Elvis. So we have a missing profile on the scooter guy. That's a surprise to me. Okay. Here are our issues. This is Elvis, and notice the zoom factor is 50%. Scooter guy is at 100%, and it's a lot smaller, right? So we have a scale difference. How can we adjust for that? Will it be an issue, etc.? You're probably going to find the opposite. When you have someone take a photo of you, even with a smartphone, the size of that image is probably going to be bigger than the one you're working in, the historic photograph. Now, again, I'm using that as a loose term, as you can see. A photo of Elvis, has a visual impact. Everyone knows who that is, right? And if you're in that photo, or someone else that you might choose, doesn't have to necessarily be historic in its nature, but just visually interesting that way. So anyway, you're going to have a larger picture than you need, I think. But this will still be a valid way to go. If we look at this, zoom this up. I actually initially flipped this image so it would be the right direction. The original JPEG was flipped the other way. But I also took the time here to create a layer mask or an alpha channel of the selection so that we didn't have to spend a lot of time doing that. The next one we want to do, I don't think I have that, so we'll have to do some selection again. But you can see from this that the selection is kind of soft, right? It's been smoothed and a little bit of feathering on it. What we're looking for as you're pulling yourself out of the photograph, first you want to choke a little bit on the selection. That select and mask feature, where you can shift the edge. We used to do that a different way before that came along in Photoshop, but the concept is valid. You want to make sure you don't take any extra pixels with you. That will show up in the other image as a fringe of you, right? The second part is you don't want hard edges. Hard edges will create obvious doctoring artifacts. And so this has been softened and feathered a little bit. If we zoom up on this, you can see the edge has several steps of blurring in that, because that's a a better look when you put somebody into a photograph. It doesn't have a hard edge to it, right? So that's what we've done here. Now I see, as I'm looking at this, that I have a little problem right here, I think, if it is my screen. There it is. Notice that there's, zoom way up on this. There's some not quite black pixels right there. What does that mean? It's probably not going to exactly show, but anything less than black means it's going to be a selection, right? It's going to, when we copy, it's going to copy some amount of those pixels, right? We're good. You understand that issue, right? So I want to fix that. I'll just choose the brush tool, push D for default color, make sure I have a black foreground. And I'll just paint those black. And it looks like over here, I have some not quite white, which I think should be white. If we were to look at the image, that's on this part of the scooter right here. So I want to paint that with white. Clean that up as well. And there's a couple other spots that actually are little spots on my monitor. But while we're at it, let's just check. Make sure we don't have any other areas. Here's, looks like another one right here. Oh, I didn't do a very good job. In my defense, it was a while back. Okay, so we want to come back to this. We'll get the selection in place, copy his image onto the clipboard so we can use the paste into command. But let's go to this image first and decide where we're going to put him. Remember with the girl in the window, we wanted to make sure she wasn't visible in the wood trim on the frame and in the chair, right? She had to be behind those things. So we had to build a selection, which would be a layer mask, where she would be visible. So we need to kind of do that here. The only issue right now that that we can think of is maybe we want to put him so he's behind Elvis. And he's got his guitar case there, and so we need him to be behind, right? So we're going to need to set up a selection above and over to the right. Not really critical, we'll just go over to the edge of the image. But right around Elvis, we need to be a little tight. Make sure we don't end up with any white fringe on his shoulder if this guy's behind him, right? So we'll see how that works. Let's zoom up a little bit and get a selection here.
Which one is this? Did he already select it over here?
Are we good? Okay, so we want to, I guess I want to use my my magnetic lasso tool. It's one of my favorites because it works so well. So we're going to go down and around the edges of Elvis and his guitar. I think I'll start right here, just where the telephone pole is behind his head. So I'll click once right there and just work around Elvis. And I'll be coming back, of course, with Quick Mask to refine this. So we just want to make a good selection as much as we can. Black leather jacket. Should be fairly easy to find the edge. down to his glove. Whenever I see motorcycle riders not wearing gloves, you know, I ride a motorcycle.
Okay.
The Ninja sport bike. We talked about that, right? You all know this. Did I not mention that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I've got to stop and show you. I'm gonna exit there. Most assume I ride a Harley because that's kind of what others my age do. But this is I have a 2015 model, the black one. I have 41,000 miles on it. So at the time it would be thinking this one would be similar to it. Kind of looking for a big picture, and Google has changed their interface so that you can't just view the image anymore. Anyway, this is the bike. 1,000 cc. It's a liter bike. I rode when I was younger. Had a CV 750, which was the original Honda 750 with the 4 pipes. Anyone?
Yeah.
Anyone? That was a classic, and I am so sorry I ever sold that bike. But I went back to college at the University of Utah when I was 31, and I had kids, and needed the money, and so on. And so 35 years later, I decided, hey, you know, I have no life. All I do is sit in my office and work on a computer. So I bought a motorcycle, Honda ST 1300 V4 engine, water-cooled, shaft drive, completely new thing to me. It was heavier than I had ever remembered a bike. It had a 7-gallon tank, which when full, that bike was close to 800 pounds. And I dropped it twice. Very embarrassing. You know, you lose points for style when you drop the bike, right? Third time I didn't let it drop, and it did some damage to my leg, and I needed some physical therapy, and I decided that bike is too much. So I sold that and bought, actually I had both of them for a while, and thought I'll just ride them both. But whenever I went for a ride, this is the bike that called to me out in my garage, you know. I talk to my bike, and it's male. We're, you know, some guys have female bikes, mine's are all male. So we bond as guys, you know, when we go riding. Anyway, this thing puts out more horsepower, and it's got a great sound, but it's the slowest of the Ninja bikes. It's the 1000 SX, which means it comes with bags. See, I don't know. I'm off on a tangent. I know. Let's see. This is not, you know, mine's black, but this is the original equipment bags that just fit into the grab handles, and it's really well designed. And we've gone on 4 or 5 day trips. A couple guys that have Ninjas also who kind of opened my eyes to this bike. I wouldn't have thought about it ever. But there's a couple of variations, the same engine, but different tuning, different suspension. The ZX10 is the track bike, and the Z1000 is the naked bike, no fairing or anything. But this has got, you know, some good stuff, and I've modified it a little bit. And some people put new exhausts on, and they're $600 to put new mufflers on. And I think these sound okay. So, long story. Back when I was on the 750, my original bike, riding along one day, and suddenly I feel pain. I look down, and there's a stinger from a bee pumping the venom into my hand. You know, what are you going to do? You're riding the bike. You can't just stop. Well, I did stop, but by that time, it really, you know, so I started wearing gloves. And now I have something like 8 pair of gloves. It's like my daughter loves shoes. She has a lot of shoes. I always teased her about finding the perfect shoe. And that's what she turns on me now, you know. I'm still looking for the perfect gloves. I have heated gloves for winter, and I have summer gloves and all that stuff. So, sorry, that's how we got off on that. So here's Elvis wearing gloves, although they look like just simple leather gloves. So anyway, while you're working, talking, and I'll try to catch up here. Just went for a ride Saturday up to Panguitch. One of the guys I ride with lives over by Page. So we meet in Kanab and I go up US 89.
That's where I was this weekend.
Kanab, the balloon festival.
Yep.
And the street thing going on. That was our clue to leave. A lot of people, a lot of pedestrians.
The lady next to us, we were there when they lit the lanterns off.
Oh,
The
yeah.
next to us, her hair started on fire. And both of my 2 kids peed their pants, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. That's good. Plenty. It burnt like half of her hair.
Oh my God.
It was, and it smelled bad. It was terrible.
She was too close to the.
She was trying to take a picture, and she backed up into the flame, and it
Oh,
smelled.
no.
Taking a selfie goes wrong.
We should not laugh.
I know, I felt bad, but it was, yeah.
Traumatic.
Mhm.
Wow. So anyway, in the winter I wear heated gear. I have full riding gear. In fact, when I've added it all up, my wife was really not excited about me getting a bike. This ST1300 I found in Houston, so I flew to Houston after not riding a bike for 35 years, sight unseen. Never had been on that bike. I just thought it was the coolest bike. Think about it, V4 engine, double overhead cam, shaft drive, you know, electric windshield. You can raise and lower the windshield up as you need to while you're riding. And I'm thinking, this is a bike. This is a great bike. Flew there, guy picked me up, rode the bike around the block, gave him his check, and bought his helmet too while I was there, and rode home from Houston. 4 days. My wife didn't sleep at all, worrying about me. But what could go wrong? You know, things didn't go wrong, thank goodness, but I was very naive. But to make her feel better, I bought full riding gear. And, you know, most people would buy leather. I know, this is my hot button. It's my hobby now. I don't wear leather, I wear Kevlar mesh. And it's more resistant to tearing than leather, which is supposedly the best, better than fabric, of course. You know, just regular jeans on the highway, if you go down, you're going to have skin grafts for a decade. Anyway, this Kevlar mesh. And then in the winter, I wear it in the summer because it breathes really well. Leather, you know, in the summer, people don't wear leather because it's too hot, right? But this I can wear all year round. In the winter, I have liners and heated, and I plug into the bike. The electrical system in the bike will heat my torso and my gloves, and I have a heated seat as well that I can turn on. So we've ridden in, you know, mid-30s, comfortable. In fact, it's colder when you get off the bike and unplug than on the bike. So on and so on and so on. But I've got somewhere around $2,500 in riding between my $600 helmet and my other stuff and the boots and whatever. So, okay, I'll stop. Anyway, as you're working your way around Elvis here, you know, you come to a place where you need to scroll. So again, space bar, and you can scroll manually to get where you want to go, and then just let go, put your cursor back where you want it to be, and then let go, and it'll revert back to the tool. And I'm going to just go down to the bottom of the guitar case, and then we'll go across over to the edge of the picture, and then up above, and again I have to scroll up. And I know this will be more higher than we need to be, but somewhere up here in the trees, then we'll just come across to the telephone pole, and then down the side of the pole, back to here. Now, I want to clean all this up. The magnetic lasso tool doesn't know how to find the edge of a picture. It just looks for edges within the pixels, right? So it's kind of messy there. And of course, right here. So OCD that I am, I want to fix all that. But I want to save this first, just so I don't lose the work. Then we'll go to Quick Mask. Q for Quick Mask. And right here, right under his arm. I don't know if we'll have an issue there, but I don't want to have a problem later. So I'm going to come back to marching ants and add to the selection here. You could do this separately. You know how to do calculations to combine and whatever. But I'm just going to add to the selection. So holding down the Shift key, I can just start a new selection here. Once you click with this tool or any of the selection tools, you don't have to keep holding the Shift key down. It's in add to selection mode, and so you can just kind of do this part. Remember, if you do, this thing does go a different direction or you make a mistake, you can just push the delete key to back it up. And keep going. So that's now part of my selection, and I want to save again just because it's been modified. So I don't want to choose a new channel. It was just a minor fix. So I'm going to choose the existing alpha channel and just replace what's in there. Right? There's no point in having a second channel. It's just a minor fix. So now we go to Quick Mask, and we see under his arm. So Quick Mask mode, B for brush, D for default colors. Check your hardness. Sure it's 100%. Normal mode and 100% opacity, and we're good to go. I haven't mentioned these other features along here on the tool options bar. If you have a Wacom tablet or other brand, then Photoshop has the ability to respond to pressure, to change brush width and so on. And it is a nice thing to do. So that's all in here. And then you also have the option of a airbrush behavior. Early in Photoshop, that used to be a separate tool. Now it's just an option for the brush or pencil tools, where you can turn on an airbrush feature. If you've ever used an airbrush, anyone? It's kind of a lost art, maybe. But, you know, it's a little compressor with a gun, some ink or paint, and you just have a little valve that you push to flow the ink. And the only problem with it is there's no undo. I remember one time I was working on a real detailed project. This was before computers, and something happened to the nozzle and it kind of spit. What do? You know, here we have undo. And so that's why computers are fast becoming a better way to go, I think. But there's still a certain creativity with that. So anyway, I'm using the brush tool here, and I just want to straighten things out. Increase the brush size a little bit using the keyboard shortcut, left and right brackets. I'm going to just click here and then hold down the shift key and click on the other end, and then go up the side, hold down the shift key, and it'll fill there. Then I'll just hold down the shift key again and go across there. And that takes care of the most obvious stuff. Now, if we want to zoom up and work with this selection, Elvis's hair and his ear, a little more definition, I think. And so just work your way around and finding areas where you need to trim this a little tighter. And we do want to switch modes so that we look at the masked area, not just the selected area. Right now we're looking at the selected area. Okay, this is a little tedious right now, but it'll get fun in a moment. And we have some problems right here with the bungee cord. Okay. Again, under his arm. And just behind his leg there, that's actually the seat of the motorcycle. So we need to let that be the seat. Something like that, but I need to see it better. I'll have to look at it the other way to finalize where that edge is. Up into the corners. Okay, so how do we switch modes? Remember? Click on the quick mask button at the bottom of the tool palette to turn it off. Then option click again, and it will switch the other way. So now we're looking, the mask is showing the mask area, not the selected area. And that helps us see that edge a little better. We switch back and forth. We can walk through the, selection edge a little better. In this case, I can see where I need to make some adjustments from this direction. Okay. Now again, a lot of this, over by his head, down at the bottom of by the motorcycle, bottom of the motorcycle and his guitar, that probably won't be a factor. We're going to put him somewhere on the road, right? But you never know where the edges might overlap. So I want to just make sure that this is accurate. And then we'll work a little bit more with the selection edge. And we're wanting this to have a smoothness to it so that we don't have a hard edge where he may be behind, etc. It'll be a giveaway on the fact that this isn't real. Our goal here is to make it look like this guy belongs here, just like your assignment. So if I exit Quick Mask and I zoom out so I can see this, and I see my marching ants, which are in the area that I chose. This is a good thing. The previous version, the last couple versions of Photoshop had a bug in them. When you would switch your Quick Mask to the mask area instead of the selected area and then exit, the marching ants would be inversed. Shouldn't have happened, but it did. Now it's fixed. So we, whatever selection we have, it stays that way instead of having it backwards. So once we have that, I want to save that selection. And this is a new version of it. We could, of course, replace the other one, but we're good here. I'm looking at it to see if there's any missing parts. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this before, when you're looking at the alpha channel, you really should deselect so that the marching ants aren't there also, because the alpha channel is the marching ants, right? They kind of are mutually exclusive. The same with Quick Mask and marching ants. You shouldn't see both at the same time. Something, is not correct. But in this case, we're good. So I think I'm happy with what I've got, except I think I might want to just smooth this a little. So I'm going to, with this selection in place, we probably should save. I'm going to save just because we've saved selection, but we haven't saved the file. Anyway, with that, do the select menu, select and mask. And let me mention one thing. I don't know if we did this last time, but if we were in Quick Mask mode, notice that the layers channel has a new feature, that the selected layer will be in color based on the color of your Quick Mask. So sometimes, for example, if I'm out here and I drop my selection and I push Quick Mask by accident, I'm not seeing a Quick Mask, so I don't know that there's a Quick Mask mode on unless I look at the button and see that it's been pressed, and that's kind of iffy. That will give us another clue. If you have a colored layer, that indicates that the Quick Mask is on. That's a new feature that's just been added. And it is the color of the Quick Mask. For example, if I change to green. And click OK, notice that that is a green color now. So that helps you be aware when you may have Quick Mask that you don't know. But now we have the selection in place that we want. Oh, that's right. We did want to use select and mask for just a little bit. I want to look at this against black. I just want to see if anything is showing here that's going to be an issue. And it looks okay. I think I want to do a little smoothing, maybe just 1 or 2. This is a bigger image, so maybe I'll go to 2. That'll just smooth the edge. And I think I'll do a half a pixel blur. And I think I'll call that good. Now, if we look at it against white, does that show us anything else? I'm seeing a little bit of dark right through here, but it's not bad at all. So I'm good. Now that's actually modified my selection by some amount, right? A little smoothing, a little feathering. So I'm going to save that selection and compare. Save my file, choose this, image, calculations, alpha 3 compared to alpha 1 or alpha 2 and subtract the difference. This is how much I have shifted that edge a little. I haven't shifted the edge. I didn't choke or spread it. I just smoothed it and did a little feathering, and this is what you'll see, right? So it gets pretty subtle. If you go to difference, it gets a little more obvious, but I don't think that that's accurate. I think the subtract is a more accurate look. Anyway, I'll cancel that. We're good. So here's our selection. We good to go? I'm belaboring this because, you know, some projects are worth the trouble. If you're doing something for a cover of a magazine, you want to spend more time on it than if you're just doing something, you know, down and dirty, I guess, for a Facebook picture. There's a lot of that out there. So what do we do now? We want to go back to the scooter guy and load his selection. Command click on the alpha channel to get him. Now we want to make sure when we copy that we are copying the picture, the image. So in the channels, make sure that you have the RGB selected, not the alpha channel. Here's a place where you can kind of get things mixed up. If I select the alpha channel and I show the picture and turn off the alpha channel, that's a disconnect. It's out of sync. I think that I am selected on the picture, but I'm really selected on the alpha channel. And when I copy this, I'll get white, right? So be careful of this. That kind of situation can happen. You want to be all selected on the picture and then copy, you know, Command C, you know, edit menu, cut, copy, paste. And then we go back to Elvis and we choose edit menu, paste special, paste into. Okay, we did this last time with the girl in the window. The selection marching ants turn into a layer mask for what we paste into it. And so we should see scooter guy, kind of small. We're going to have to make him bigger. And we get away with that. You know, some things you can fudge a little bit. There's no free lunch here. There's no CIA plug-in that lets you, you know, create image that isn't there. But we'll space him up or scale him up a little bit, and I think we can work with it. Is everyone okay with this? Did you get it? We have a new layer. Sorry?
I'm backwards somehow. I gotta select. Somehow I'm backwards.
Yeah. So undo that.
Undo.
Go to the history palette right there, and just go back. Yeah. Back up one more. Okay, we're good. But see the marching ants way out here?
Okay, so I'm on the wrong side.
So select menu and inverse. Then you can paste into from there. Should be okay. Sorry?
I'm just telling them because people can use wrong. Do what? Like this. It's supposed to look like just do select.
Okay. So of course we have some issues, right? We got a couple things. Are you good?
Sorry.
Based into.
Yeah, I guess I lost the selection. You should be okay.
So, of course, he's in color, and he's too small. And we need to decide where he needs to be on the road to be in proper perspective. If he's this small, he should be way back on the highway, right? But we want him a little closer because that won't work as well. So let's first remove color. You know, this is an RGB document, even though it's a black and white photograph. We could actually switch everything under mode to grayscale, but then that means Photoshop controls it and does whatever it does. And sometimes that's okay, but I'd like to be in control of this. So we left it as an RGB document. And now we just want to add a adjustment layer to Scooter Guy. I think I'll change the name here. Scooter Guy, and we'll make, well, yeah, let's make that a layer and call it Elvis. If you double click on the word background, it'll actually turn it into a layer, and you can give it a name. So anyway, let's add an adjustment layer to the Scooter Guy. So I'm using the menus here, hue and saturation. And we want to use the previous layer to create a clipping mask so that it'll only affect Scooter Guy, not Elvis. Well, of course, Elvis is in black and white anyway, but we do want to target the guy directly with some things we're going to do. So we're going to desaturate this image of the Scooter Guy. Yeah, that'll work. For now, I want to come back and add another adjustment layer, but in the meantime, we need to make him big enough. We could do that first, and then, but no pixels have been harmed. So we're going to use the free transform tool. Command T is the keyboard shortcut for that. Right under the edit menu, free transform right there. And let's just scale him up. Hold down the shift key so he doesn't, distort his image, and we'll just make him a little bit bigger. How big should he be on the highway, right? Where are we putting him? We put him up close. Again, notice that he's behind Elvis, right? Because of the layer mask. So notice he kind of disappears wherever, right? Because we've set up that mask. And so if we scale this up a little bit right there, but maybe I want him back a little ways. So that's too big. This is something you should, as you put yourself in to this other photograph and you're sizing yourself to fit, you should have other people look at it. Because it's really common for students to make themselves too big or too small. It doesn't quite look right. So have somebody else look at it as well. And maybe before you click the OK button. Of course, we could make this a smart object, but that adds some other complications for what we want to do. But you could do it to protect the pixels, and you could adjust it after the fact. But we're making it bigger, so we're adding pixels, right? Taking the same image, and we're spreading it over more pixels. But it's only a small amount, I'm actually making him 100, looks like 150 at this point, 150%. So I'm just trying to decide where to put him. I think I'd like him to be a little further back because I want to do something with the trees, the shadow of the trees on him to make that look realistic. And that makes him a little too big where he's at. So I'm going to size that down just a little bit, trying to identify that perspective size. What size should he be on the highway, right? Somewhere around there. Okay. Now, he looks like he's floating because he has no shadow. So when you put yourself into a photograph, if the situation has shadows, make sure you give yourself a shadow. How do we give him a shadow? But before we do that, I'm a little ahead of myself. Look at his skin. Look at Elvis's skin.
Yeah, but Elvis is in the sun and he's in the shade.
That's true. But his skin tones need to be a little brighter. It's just the, the color, it's the black and white part. We need, of course, his clothes need to be dark, but his skin tone needs to be a little lighter. We just took the color out and it's made his skin tones too dark. Here's what we can do. If we, again, go to the layer, adjustment layer, exposure, and again, make sure we are using the clipping mask feature. So this affects this clipping mask. And let's increase the exposure. Let's give him a little brighter skin tones. Again, he's in the shadows, as pointed out, but we need his skin tones to be a little lighter, but using the gamma correction, we can still darken everything else. And we may come back and adjust this once we get everything dialed in. So this is what was before, and this is what we have now. Okay. Exposure will do that for us. And also, you may want to, whenever I have multiple adjustment layers on a layer like this, sometimes I like to see what it looks like with the different order. And the only thing I can see that's changing is the front little plastic thing on the scooter. Kind of changes look. Otherwise, it's not that significant. So we're good. Okay. These are adjustment layers. We can come back and adjust them. How do we give him shadow? The shadows are fairly detailed, right? We're out in the sun here, got nice detail. We can't just take a brush tool and try to make a detailed shadow there. It's going to be difficult. But let's do something better. In the process, we're going to break what we've got set up here, so we'll have to reattach everything. But I want to duplicate the scooter guy layer, including the layer mask, because the shadow needs to be behind Elvis also. So right-click, duplicate layer, and we'll call this shadow. Okay, and everything got busted up because the clipping mask thing changed. So let's move the shadow below the scooter guy and then reconnect these adjustment layers just to the scooter guy instead of everything. Again, option click on the line between the layers lets you turn those into clipping mask mode, right? So now we have a shadow, but it's not a shadow yet. Turn off scooter guy, which turns off these other two adjustment layers as well. And we have, the shadow is in color, right? That's okay. What we want to do is fill the scooter guys, this layer with, that's to be the shadow, we want to fill him with black. If we just fill this with black, it'll fill the whole layer. What we want to do is lock the transparency of this layer. Remember when we painted the girl's hair? We used the transparency lock so that when we painted, it only painted where there were already pixels and didn't paint where there weren't any. Remember that? This comes in handy. Right here, this first lock feature on the layers palette is lock transparent pixels. So we'll turn that on for this shadow layer. Then we just want to fill with black. Keyboard shortcut, edit menu is where you find the fill command. Keyboard shortcut is Shift Delete. So we want to use black, 100% opacity, normal mode, and it'll just fill the existing pixels with black. Right? So whatever color was there, it's gone. We're just doing that. Is it? Are we good? And we want to turn off the lock because we're going to move those pixels. So turn that off. Turn Scooter Guy back on. And here is the shadow behind him. And we want to be selected on that, and we want to be selected on that image of the shadow, not the layer mask, right? Make sure there's no link between them, no little chain between the two, none of those things. We're going to distort the shadow and lay it down on the ground. Okay, so edit menu, transform submenu, there's a distort feature. We get the bounding box with the handles on it. Just click the top center handle and drag it down so that it's laying on the ground, like this. But what we want to do is distort this because the shadows, we need the shadow to be places. So I'm going to click on the handles, and what I want to do is have the shadow, you know, underneath the front tire like Elvis's bike is. And I also want to see some shadows of his foot, right, on the ground. So I'm spreading out the shadow, distorting, clicking on the corner handles, and pushing and pulling this around a little bit to get the look I'm after. And trying to match up the angle of Elvis's shadow, etc., how far it is out, and so on. And if this is in your way, if these lines and the handles are in your way, you can hide them. They're still there. The bounding box with the handles is still there, but you hide them. This is part of, under the view menu, extras, Command H. Notice that you have under the show menu is all the things that you want to show. And I'm not sure which part of this is on. That may be guides or I don't know. But it works. You choose that. Command H. The first time you use this, you may get an alert asking if you want to hide Photoshop app or hide these extras. Anyone getting that? Because under the Photoshop menu, there is a hide Photoshop, which uses Shift Command H. But Photoshop wants to make sure Command H is doing what it's actually the operating system that's asking. Once you tell it, you don't get that again. But notice that I'm not seeing the handles, but as I move my cursor around, I can see when it engages those handles. So I can move this around and get the shadow right under his front tire like Elvis's. You know, here's a handle over here. I don't want to use that one. And H to see what I'm doing. There's another one right there. And so I think I'm good where I want to be. And so we just push return. and we have a shadow. We're not seeing a lot of that because it's behind Elvis, right? But that's because of the layer mask. Again, the layer mask is making the illusion that it's behind. This guy's in front, right? But we are this good of an illusion. Reminds me of the story of a woman who came into a photo studio and had a photograph of her late husband. And she asked if it were possible to take the hat off of her late husband's photo because it kind of hid his face. You know, I want to remember him the way he was. His head wasn't the thing he normally wore, and so on. Can you take the hat off? He said, well, I got some experience with Photoshop. I can do that. But I need to know how he combed his hair. And she said, well, you'll see that when you take the hat off. But again, you know, the data isn't there. You got to put it in, right? We have the same situation. The photo, the images are in front. If we click on these layer masks, well, the one that we'll see is the shadow. See how the shadow is in front because we disabled the layer mask. Anyway, that's the illusion we want. And everything looks okay. And we kind of want to link these two together if we decide to move things. So if you take these two and select them together, shift select so they're both connected, and you can lock them together. I think you can do it down here. Link layers. Down at the bottom, there's a little handle there, but in the layers menu, there's also a link command. We've got a group layer, but we also have link layers. Group would put it into a folder. Anyway, if we do that, notice that these two now have links showing up in their layers. And if you click on one of them and want to move it using the move tool, notice that the shadow will go with it, right? So continue to refine this a little bit. Maybe I want him to be a little closer, and there's my shadow underneath Elvis's arm. All of that works, right? Wherever we are. So I guess I'm good right there. So now the next part would be, well, his shadow's too dark. Let's just lighten his shadow. Select that and lower the opacity of it. So it's more like Elvis's in density. We also could blur that a little bit, but it's not too obvious. I don't think that's a real issue, although if we zoom up, we can tell. This has got a little bit of a soft edge. It does not. This is kind of hard edge. And so maybe we'll do that. We'll select the shadow and apply a little bit of blur to it. Again, Gaussian blur lets us do this in sub-pixel amounts. So it's kind of hard-edged. So I'm going to go, I don't know, looking at it, trying to look at Elvis's shadow and this one. I'm thinking maybe about 1.2, somewhere in there. Your choice. If we scroll this, see this, where are we? I have no idea. That's why these are older filters, and so you can't really get a good look at them. There he is. Yeah, I think 1.2 is good. That's just a little bit of a blur on the shadow. You know, inside, when we have lights that create shadows, we have a very soft edge. But out in the sunlight, 93 million miles away, the light source is essentially parallel lines of light, right? Or photons, whatever we want to call it. And so the shadows get hard edged outside. Inside, they're a little softer. But we're just going to blur a little bit of the edge, lighten the opacity to get something close to what Elvis has. Next, since we put him in the shadow of the trees, we should see shadow on him. And we want to kind of create that effect where we see lights and darks on him as he's going through the shadow. How do we get that? What we want to do is go back to the original image and maybe even hide everything for a moment, turn off everything, so we are just on the base layer, and use the just the lasso tool and lasso some shadow. Kind of like that. Just grab some shadow there and copy that. Okay? And we're good, drop that. Then I want to select the top layer, in this case, the exposure adjustment layer, and paste. And it'll create a new layer. Whatever layer you have chosen, when you paste, it creates a new layer just above whatever is selected. So I wanted it to be at the top. If you are selected somewhere else, it pastes in there, you can drag it to the top. But here's my shadow right there. I want to put that over him, and I want to use the free transform to distort that and cover him. So Command T will stretch that up and down. We'll do something like this. Probably don't need to stretch it or just squeeze it horizontally. Maybe just a little. I don't know. But I'm over the full top of him. I covered him up. So then we push OK. And then we want to make that be one of the clipped items so it's only on him. So again, Option, click on that line. So now all we see is that shadow thing that we did on him, right? He determines the visibility of anything that's clipped. But, of course, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for just a shadow. So we need to change the blend mode. If we multiply, then everything goes dark. We could compensate using the exposure, and we could try to make that work, but it's easier if we switch to another blend mode. The lighten, of course, does the opposite. It makes everything too light. Overlay is more neutral, but it actually is a little dark still, and we probably will. But I'm thinking, notice that soft light isn't quite as stark as overlay. You know, whenever I use these blend modes, I never know which one I'm going to use. I just have a general idea. Well, multiply group darkens, other one lightens, and this one's neutral. But I keep playing with it until I get what I want, or something close if I can make that work, right? So in this case, soft light looks like it's giving me something I can work with, but it's still too dark. So let's bring up our exposure again, and let's brighten him up some more. And maybe we'll take a little bit of gamma correction off. See if we can get something on him. I'm not seeing enough variation of that. So I'm going to push this a little more. I'm going to use this is a layer, and I could use an adjustment layer, except that it already is being treated like an adjustment layer. So I'm going to go directly to the image menu and choose adjustments. And I'm going to adjust the exposure, but I could choose levels or curves or brightness and contrast, but I think I'll choose exposure to act directly on the pixels that are the shadow. I want to push those to be more contrasty. See how I'm getting something more on him, right? Lights and darks on him. See what I'm after there? We're harming these pixels, but it's okay. It's just the shadow thing, right? So would that work? Yeah, I'm going for that. Something like that, just enough to give some, you know, shadows playing on his clothing. Okay. What do you think? I'm actually feeling a little too dark here. His face is really contrasting. Yeah, let's try to lighten this up a little bit. In the shadows, so we don't want him as bright as Elvis, but I don't want it to be so harsh. So just playing with the sliders, trying to find that place. And then you look away. Get up, walk around, do something else. Come back and look at it again and see what you think. First impression. You can talk yourself into anything if you look at it long enough. So you want to walk away. You want somebody else to come look at it. What do you think? Does this look right? You're here, you put yourself into a photograph. Do you look like you belong? And they may see something that you don't.
What would happen if you, instead of doing that overlay on the shadow, if you would have changed the opacity of the shadow?
– Instead of filter effect?
Yeah.
Good question.
Would it look just as good, or would it look bad?
Well, let's back up. Go to here. I think that
I just mean from the very beginning, like the very first time you laid the shadow on top of him,
And then create it.
and then yeah,
okay. So we just turn that off then, like that.
yeah, and now overlay that shadow over the top of him again.
Okay.
Not the edited shadow. Remember, you copied out a little square of shadow
Okay.
and put that all the way over him,
Let's
and
let's
it
do that
filled his
again.
shape.
So I'm just pasting another one in.
Okay,
So
and then you
this-
covered him, and it filled his shape. You stretched it out.
Yeah. Like this.
Yep. And then you put that over him.
Okay. And we make it a flipping thing.
Yeah.
Whoops, gotta set that. And then this.
Yeah, and now what would happen if you changed the opacity of that layer
And
to
not
like
change
really low?
not change the blend mode.
Yeah.
Okay. That kind of works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of does. So I'm going the long way around the block to get somewhere.
Well, I didn't know if that would work or not.
Well, it could, yeah. It actually looks a little better now that you've mentioned it, not so harsh. I think I've gone too hard on it. But he is kind of grayed out.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we push our exposure a little bit? Maybe like that. This is what I have. This is what you have. And I'm seeing the color, the lightness and darkness on his clothing, so that's a good thing. But it's a little softer than mine. And I'm not unhappy with that. I think you've got a good idea there. Yeah. Okay, so it's 6:30. We should take a break. And let's just kind of save our work. We'll come back and see what we think looking at it new again, and maybe tweak it a little bit, but then we'll move on to another little project. Same thing. Yes.
Is there a way to make, let's say like I got a certificate or some type of text on a 10 by 11, or I have a PDF of a 10 by 11 text. Could I put it in here and make it huge so that when I print it out, it still looks good and not super pixelated?
Well, there is a scale feature.
Like,
You had something to show.
I don't have, let's see, let's find, so this is what my wife wants. She wants this huge.
Okay, it's a PDF,
Uh-huh.
which means it's vector. If you go into Photoshop, you'll turn it into pixels. It's actually better here and use something like InDesign,
What's that?
page layout software.
Also, I have
You
to
don't want
buy
these-
new software.
Well, it comes with the suite.
Oh.
It's Adobe.
Oh, okay.
So you have this at home or here.
Uh-huh. I have it at home.
Well, then you'd have InDesign. Just haven't ever seen it because you haven't looked.
Oh, I don't have Photoshop at home.
Oh,
I don't have Adobe Suite at home.
Okay, I see. Well, you could use it here.
I have this PDF. Well, not this one. It's a different one, but it's close to this.
Okay,
But so we tried printing this out, like we just took the PDF into Costco and said print it out.
and it's
Yeah.
8.5 by 11.
The PDF.
Yeah.
Is for a normal page.
But
But when we print it out on a paper this big, when you print it out, it's like
Soft.
There's just like,
Fuzzy.
yeah, it's fuzzy. The lines aren't crisp. And we want it to be crisp.
Okay, Photoshop could work to do this, but see, why is it rasterizing? I mean,
It's because what happens
PDF
when you
is-
print it out big, it just stretches everything.
yeah, but a PDF is text, it's vector. There's no resolution issues with it. So if you were to.
So maybe it's not I'll have her send it to me right now.
Well, see, as you're zooming this up, it's not going soft here. See how
It's not. That's why I just did that to see.
Yeah.
And I can't zoom any further than that.
so if you download that.
I don't know if I can.
Okay, back up one step. Hold down the Alt key. Click on it. Download. So it's now down in the downloads.
And put that into Photoshop.
No, just put it on the desktop. Just hide everything.
Okay. Now,
No, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Now let's go to InDesign. So you'll have to bring up your,
InDesign.
not in here. It needs to be, where are you looking?
Right here.
Hard drive. Okay, good. Are you wanting to do it on a tabloid? 11 by 17?
I don't know. She wants it pretty big. She wants it like this wide. So probably bigger than 11 by 17.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 11 by 17 would work.
This printer is able to print that, so let's just try one.
will print on a, oh, you have big paper.
Okay, so once you have the documents,
It's taking a long time to load.
because you have it in the launch.
See if she sends me the motion wants.
Okay, this is now
Open it.
create new and set the document size to tabloid. So presets, where are you? Print tabloid.
And then put this in.
Yeah. Actually, you've got to place it. Use the file menu, choose place. Choose that. It's a number, so it's right at the top. There it is. Click that. And click on it.
I have to put it in the corner.
Anywhere you do. Then you can size that to fit, but the aspect ratio stored it. Fit it. Let's see. First one, I think. No, not that. Right there.
Yeah.
Click on the second
Put
one.
that in. Yeah, select that.
And if we object menu at the bottom, display performance, high quality display. We'll zoom up on that. Okay, but we're looking at it on the screen, so now the question is printing. We're going to print this.
And then
choose neon. It's that one right there.
and hit print.
You got to make sure you got the right page situation. It has to be a tabloid. Good. And 100%. Center it. Centered, everything's centered. It will be good. We can try a quick.
Can I see a preview?
No, won't help you here. I mean, all you're seeing is a low resolution screen.
Okay.
What you want is, what does it look like in print?
Yeah.
Assume this is coming this. See, it'll hold the quality. Yeah, PDF has the step to do it. The problem with Walmart is that it only knows pixels. That's for pictures and stuff.
Probably the same with Costco.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why
So now the option is.
I could just bring it here and do it. Well, I have to use different paper, but yeah, that doesn't change at all. That looks great. Thank you.
You could save that, but you may want to make some.
Well, it's
May not be
it's
the
a
right
different
one.
thing that she wants done, so.
Okay.
But now I know how to do it. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Well, we got a few more minutes. I think I'll go to a drink. Is this working okay? You're not running out of battery? Should be good. I'm impressed. Is it a new laptop?
You know how do you want to do this?
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you find like a network or a broadcast without knowing the original IP? So let's like on this one. What is the usable host range?
So this is going to be 221.1. This is going to be 255. 221.
Oh, 22. It'll be,
Take this from 0 to 1,
and then it'll be,
this will be 2254.
okay, that one makes sense. Because that's the IP. Yeah.
That's one.
Which subnet? So how do I find the subnet that belongs to without knowing the original? Uh-huh. How do you know?
Because it's class A. So 1 0. 255. They're not different.
That? Oh, because it remains the same.
Yeah.
On a class A, I thought that the second one changed.
Usually.
Are you
because
guys
it's
starting to get
255,
telemarketers
Oh,
on your cell
yeah.
phone?
Which network address
I
does
have for Asia.
that? So it's a network
Phone calls.
address.
Silence. Trying to sell me insurance.
Or
You know, sometimes I'll get phone calls
244.
and if I answer, it's an unknown number.
And then
And if I answer, there's nobody there.
255,
And
so that doesn't change. And that's,
putting out.
So, you know, puzzled by
I
it.
think-
Why would that happen?
We're double checking.
What I
Well, I
think
can
is
take it as
happening,
many
what I've
times.
read is that they're just testing the number to make sure it's a good number so they can
broadcast address of the
So I
network.
never answer on phone.
So it's gonna be.
And then I block the caller afterwards. So I never hear from that number again.
255, because it's one
The
less.
thing that I think is wrong,
I think sometimes they robocall, and if there's not an operator available, then it's
well, this happens repeatedly. And in fact, today I had from the same number called twice.
and nobody there.
Nobody was there. And I thought, well, if they're calling again, maybe it was just a
This
wrong
one
call.
tells me the correct answer and lets me take it again.
Because it's
The thing that bothers me is that there is no law to prevent telemarketers from spoofing their caller ID. Because you get all of these weird numbers from other places. Or we stopped answering our landlines. We have to have it because it's part of the bundle, but we don't answer it at all because it's just all telemarketers.
Picture all those and get 100.
They will have local numbers. Like, oh, this is somebody in town, I need to answer this, it might be somebody I know. No, it isn't. So, at least on the cell phone, you can block the call.
Google's the one that I just get a ton of calls trying to verify my account. I keep saying, you know, block it, and next day I got my calls.
You know, and when you say, take me off your list, they don't do that, they just hang up.
It gets rid of them. Just, I've always been
It's just
that
like,
list.
pop.
I was like,
Well, it's a sad thing. So anyway, here we are looking at our picture one more time. I think I want to be somewhere between these two. This is a softer look. This is a harsher look, but I'm looking at the black of Elvis's, you know, code, thinking that's kind of the look I'm after. So But I do like the better look here. So maybe I'll darken it here a little bit. Anyway, this is the idea. Is it believable? I'm not sure. I think it is, but I can talk myself
I
into
think he
it.
looks a little big.
Yeah? Okay. So if we select him, of course his shadow is linked. And if we now say that's a little too big, then it will also lower or scale his shadow down with him. So that kind of works, maybe. We could move him down a little bit. So he's on the ground a little more. Trying to find that perspective, right? So that's the idea. Let's go do another one. We'll close these out, save that one. Let's go get another picture. Back to the main directory for 2600. This one where I've got Kitty Hawk flight and an astronaut. I'm not really excited about that. I'm looking for the other one. On the moon. On the moon. We've got a couple pictures here. So it'd be just a decision of which one we want to put in. Here is Neil Armstrong on the moon. Right? Here's a kid astronaut, which I think would be interesting. But we don't have a alpha channel for that. We could do this one, cheerleaders on the moon, or not. Amelia Earhart, I got here first. Let's do the little girl astronaut, doing our time. So we want to download Neil on the moon. And the girl. Okay. So we look at her and we see, you know, we've got some hair issues. Darn, wish I'd had. We don't have time on. Maybe we won't do this. I want to talk about hair, which, you know, we could talk about afterwards, I suppose, but it may be a factor if you end up needing to select hair. Let me pass this around. Thing is, I have this picture with an alpha channel already done. You could have had that. I didn't realize I didn't have it uploaded to my office on my computer there. Well, let's see what we have here. Let's go back and get some more pictures. We'll come back to that.
Take it.
Masking hair. Okay. Wild hair. There's two images. Bathroom picture. Download that. And a woman. And this is worst case scenario. This is hair. How can we get this hair? Now, we do have an advantage in that it is against a solid background. There's another technique for, you know, other pictures with that we want to come back and talk about. If we back up one directory, notice that we have curly hair. This one has some issues, but it's got a background, right? So we want to talk about this one, but our time between, you know, for class is getting a little short. So we'll do the one in the bathroom with the solid background, and then maybe afterwards we'll talk about that some more. So if you're going to have a photo of you taken, just close all that. Do it against a solid background. Now, you know, you probably won't have this hair. This is worst case scenario. We want to do this, right? But this would make it easier for you to get the hair selection that you want. So let me get my example, my steps, because it's going to take us a couple of steps to do this. Okay. So let's open the bathroom image in Photoshop. And we'll go with Adobe RGB, missing profile, just JPEG. Here's the image. Okay. And then we want to place, using the file menu, place embedded the other picture. And they happen to be the same size. So we'll accept that. Now this is a smart object, okay? And I'm thinking we want to remove that. So let's rasterize this layer so that it's just pixels. You can see that position here. If we make that transparent, that kind of works for us. It's kind of like she's looking in the mirror, right? Anyway, we want to duplicate this layer, the woman. So this will be the second layer. And then, with this layer chosen, go to the channels and click on the individual channels and see which one gives us the best contrast. Green channel looks pretty good. The blue channel is even better, looks like. Okay, see the contrast that's going on here. So we can take that blue channel and we can use that as a beginning point for our alpha channel. So we want to duplicate this channel and we'll call it alpha 1. Just because that's what we normally call an alpha channel, and we'll turn off the other parts of the image. And we're just working on this alpha channel. Okay. The alpha channel, we want to invert the image. So once we have this channel separate, right, we're not messing with the image. The image is okay. The alpha channel is just a duplicate of the blue channel. And then we want to go to the image menu under adjustments and invert the image. Like this. And we want to lasso kind of loosely the face. And down to, you know, down to this area, kind of. What we're wanting to do is get white as our selection, right? White allows, black suppresses. So we want to fill this with white. And I'm thinking maybe I need to go even further down here. So I'm going to add to my selection. And so once we do that, shift delete contents to white, and we fill with white. Except that, well, that's okay. Now, the hair's got some details in it, which in an alpha channel selection situation means they're not fully selected, right? So we don't want that. We want to paint white in all of the hair, staying away from the areas where the hair starts to fly away. But in the solid areas, we want to paint white for that. So B for brush, D for default colors, and I'm kind of thinking I want to maybe soften the edge a little. Let's go down to about a 25% hardness. And let's just paint all of the detail out of the hair till we get close to the edge where we can see transparency.
What's your latest?
Stay away from that. Okay. We want to paint down into her shoulders, and we may want to go to a hard edge brush there because we've got a hard situation. Because her shoulders aren't white, right? We need her shoulders to be white as well. So let's switch our hardness back to 100%. That. Okay. Again, I'm staying away from any hair that starts to have transparency in it. Okay. And we need to make the gray background darker. And this is another tool that you may or may not ever use. Let's use the burn tool. So that would be here. There's a dodge tool and a burn tool and a sponge tool. If you've ever done any darkroom work, anyone, with film, with negatives, enlargers, printing, if you want your negative, or your print, I should say, to be darker, then you would use the burn tool. And what I used to do is take this big piece of paper and attach a couple of sticks to the paper, glue them on, tape them on, whatever, and then cut a hole in the middle, and then cut around the inside of the hole to make it fringe-like, right? Really soft or not a solid edge. And then as the enlarger is exposing the print paper, I would move this around in the area so that the light could get to that part and not expose as much of the other, right? It was burning in the image darker. The opposite, of course, is the dodge tool. And you could do a smaller one, popsicle stick, round circle, cut around the edge, and you just, you know, in the area that was too dark, you'd just dodge it. The rest of the picture would get darker, and that would not get as dark. Ansel Adams spent hours doing this in his images that are so famous, right? His landscape, black and white photos. You've seen them, right? They didn't just happen that way. He did it in the darkroom, and he would love Photoshop. But those are the tools in electronic form. We want to use the burn tool And looking at the field above, we want to choose the mid-tones. And I'm thinking maybe 33%, although we could go a little more, but we just want to take all of this area. Let's go higher. Maybe about 67%. And we want to burn this in. This needs to be